Let me know if you guys can hear me. Awesome. Yeah. I don't know. Hey, DJ Reagan. Thanks for joining. I don't know who's gonna show up. I also don't really have a plan as to what I'm gonna be doing. I figure I just have an easy night and chat with you guys. We can talk about gear. We can talk about deep sky objects, or we can talk about your overall experiences so far in astrophotography, and we can just exchange ideas. Um, I um, I for one haven't had any. Um, yeah, we can do a Q&A session too. I to be honest, I haven't had a chance to even go out there because um, I haven't had a clear night since February. To be honest, it's kind of insane that it's been it's been almost 2 months and I haven't had a clear night. I yeah, I don't even know if the Galaxy season will apply to me. How how's everybody you doing? Um, are you guys having fun during the Galaxy season? What are um what are some of your favorite objects that you guys have been able to capture? How to get better in polar alignment? Um, Also, let me know if I have any lag between my visual and audio, or just overall any technical issues. But how to get better at polar alignment? Well, the short answer, yeah, I'll talk about a journey as well. But I think I wanna help. Uh, you will find DG. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name incorrectly. But I want to talk about how to get better polar alignment first. And this has worked for me. And so far, I am still using what most people would call a rough polar alignment, and that is I use the pole scope that came with my scope, whether it's the Star Ventra Pro or my HUQ5 Pro. And basically, I point the thing to north. I You will find George. I point the thing to north, and I make sure that the star that I'm using, and I think this is really important, and I think a lot of people sort of mess this up, is that I make sure that the star that I'm actually using is in the Polaris. Because through the poloscope, you can actually find few other stars nearby, and if you pick the wrong dot, and you use that as your Polaris, then all bets are off. So what I like to do is I like to go out there. Oh, you will find George. Okay, George. Um, what I like to do is I try to get out there. If I have to polar align, then I try to get out there a little bit before total darkness so that there's still a little bit of light in the sky. And then this way, only the brightest of the bright stars will still appear in the twilight hours, so that when I look up and I look to the north, I am certain that the dot that I'm seeing is indeed Polaris, because nothing else should be bright enough to shine through the twilight hours. Um, and then if that doesn't work, then you can try to position your mount so that it's close, so that Polaris it will be close to some sort of landmark, whether it's a tree branch or some random pole, so that through your poloscope, when you see that tree mark, the tree branch or that pole, you know Polaris is going to be around. And so if you see that dot around, whatever tree branch that you're using as a landmark, then you know for sure, oh, okay, that's Polaris. Um, Other than that, my polar alignment is really rough. Um, like, for example, if my app says, oh, Polaris should be at 4:07 o'clock. Honestly, I just put it at 4:10 because that's as close as I can get it without using something like a sharp cap or some other form of like precise polar alignment. Um, so, and I find that even with a rough polar alignment, your mount should be fairly accurate. Um, I've also gotten to the point where I basically do not move my mount anymore. Um, there's this one spot in my yard where I have the best view of Polaris before it gets blocked by my tree, and I have the most hours in the night sky before objects starts to disappear behind my house. So yeah, so that's why I've gotten to the point where I park my mount and I don't move it. So every single night I go out there when I have a session, I don't actually need to repolar align, but I do check it and make sure that Polaris is still in the area. Um, okay, so hopefully that helps. I know polar alignment is kind of annoying, especially when you aren't sure which dot that you're looking at is indeed Polaris. Um, yeah, just I guess just keep practicing, and then eventually you're gonna get to the point where when you look at that one particular bright dot that okay, that's Polaris for sure. Uh, it's kind of dark. Oh, let me change the light in here. It's dark. That's a little better. Okay. Next. Hey, Cody Brown is here. Let's see, the next person, DJ Reagan. I will answer your question about the journey, because I can go on and on about that, but I think you asked another one. Have I tried the green laser pointer trick? Um, I use a green laser pointer for when I use my Star Ventra Pro to help me find object. I got the right dot. I just realized I can't get. George, are you guiding? Yeah, are you guiding at 3 minutes and 20 seconds? You are guiding. Um, wow. Okay. That's I wonder why. Because at 500 millimeters, what kind of trails? Left to right or up and down trails? Also, how balanced are you? Because if I remember your if I remember your setup, I believe your 500 millimeters is a camera lens. So, are you balanced with your camera lens? Are you balanced on both RA and declination axis? Yeah, I think okay. Um, you shouldn't you shouldn't have. Yeah, I don't know. I think one of these nights when you fire up your rig, um, I may just have to take a look at your at your at your PhD2 settings because I mostly left mine at default. Um, whatever the pixel size is, it's coming straight from the camera. I don't touch it. Only thing I change is the focal length of my guide scope, but aside from that, I don't do a whole lot when it comes to settings. Um, there is another thing you can try on the PhD2 setting, and it's really based on your graphs. Whichever one, when you look at your graph, you see like large like peaks and valleys. Like it'll go straight up and it'll go straight down. And basically just really sharp like sharp points because if you have really sharp points, that means that uh, your guiding is a little bit too aggressive. Oh, you never set the focal length on your guide scope? Yeah. Okay. That may explain it. Um, but also pay attention to your graphs. Um, you basically want your graph to be as smooth as possible. Now, my graphs are pretty bad. Um, I have a hard time getting my guiding below 1 arc second of error. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever gotten consistently throughout the whole night uh, error below 1 arc second. Um, but my stars around, I don't have any trails. Um, so when you look at your graph, uh, if you start to see like sharp peaks and sharp dips, try to adjust your aggressiveness on PhD2. I think on declination, the default aggressiveness, honestly, 1 to 3 seconds, you should be fine. Um, because a lot of time, my entire night hovers around like a 2 second arc second of error, and my stars around. So I think you should worry if you're consistently over 4 seconds of error. Um, but try setting your focal length first, and then on your graph, if you start seeing peaks, try to dial down the aggressiveness. And you can do it while guiding, so you don't have to reset everything, and it will still continue to guide. It's just that the less aggressive you set the declination or RA or whichever axis you have issues with, it will just make those pulses not as strong and help smooth out the graph. Okay, back to DJ Reagan and the laser pointer. Yes, I use a laser pointer. When I use my Star Ventra Pro, I have to manually find my objects. So I definitely use the laser pointer and just sort of turn it on for like a brief second to see where I am in the night sky, so I can keep making my manual adjustment until I get close to my target, and then I start to take test frames to see how close I am to my target, and then to frame it, of course. But just make sure that when you're using your green laser pointer, that number one, it's legal for you to use it. Number two, don't use it when there are airplanes around. And number three, don't leave it on. Just turn it on for like a second or two just to see where you are, and then turn it back off. I think green laser pointers are awesome because if you buy them right, they're not too expensive. I don't think you should be spending more than $30 on a green laser pointer. I know if you buy from like the quote unquote authentic astrophotography green laser pointer from Orion or some other astronomy company, they charge a little more. I've seen them go for like $50 for a green laser pointer. No, don't pay that much. That's insane. Just buy a generic green laser pointer from Amazon. Try not to spend more than $30 because it's a laser pointer. You don't do much with it, and they all work pretty much the same. And of course, don't look into the laser pointer. Don't even look at the reflection of the laser pointer, because the laser will bounce off of not even polished surfaces. Like it'll bounce off walls and wood and whatnot. Just be mindful that this is still a laser, even though it's not red. But yes, whenever I use the Star Ventra Pro and I have to manually find my target, I use the green laser pointer. Yeah, I've seen people use laser pointer where they just leave it on. Um, Number one, you may not realize it, but those lasers, they drain the battery really quickly. So if you leave it on, it will just die really fast. And yeah, secondly, obviously, is that you don't want to leave it on because of passing aircrafts. You don't want to blind the pilots or distract the pilots. It's just yeah, I just don't do it. Um, and then let me get back to your earlier question about the astrophotography journey. Um, is there anything in particular you want to hear, like how I started or what I think of it as a hobby and as a community? Because best budget APO, 500 or less. Um, Cody Brown, do you have a focal length requirement with your apochromatic refractor? And DJ Reagan, you can let me know if you want to hear how I started or like what I think of the hobby, what I think of the community, or I can just go off and talk about my overall journey. I don't mind either way. Around 400 millimeters. Okay, for $500 or less, I have two options for you. Um, I'll type it into the chat so you can look for it. Yeah, so Cody Brown, I put down no, DJ Reagan, definitely don't start big. I always tell people to start small. But Cody Brown, I can recommend those two, especially if you're looking for apochromatic refractor. Um, and I don't know if you guys know this, but obviously I use quite a bit of William Optics, and I was going to put the William Optics Zenith Star 61 in there, but that will push you over the $500 budget. Um, but the reason why I listed the Astrotech AT60ED and the Apertura, because all three of these scopes, they are actually identical. They came from the same manufacturer. It's just that they have been rebranded three times. Astrotech has their own version, Apertura has their own version, and William Optics has their own version of the same telescope with about close to 360 millimeters of focal length. And I believe the Astrotech, you can get it for $400 brand new when they're in stock. And of course, you need to get a field flattener with that. And then I believe for Apertura, you can get the telescope and the dedicated field flattener for I believe $520 as an entire package. The William Optics, just a scope alone at the moment, I believe is going for $570, and then you have to factor in the field flattener on top of that. So the William Optic version will cost you quite a bit more. I think when it's all said and done, when you throw in the necessary field flattener, you're coming in at like, I don't know, 700, 750. So what are the differences between the three of them? Well, not much really. Technically and optically, all three telescopes are identical. The difference is that, the add-ons and accessories. Now, I will say that the William Optics version, if you price out the individual add-on and accessory that comes with the William Optics package, the cost comes out to be the same. And I say that because the William Optics comes with a bath mount mask. It comes with a much more user-friendly and longer dovetail plate, um, which I believe the Apertura has too. You should double check. But I know the Astrotech is the most bare bone of the three versions. So when you buy the Astrotech, and you kind of want to build it up to be similar as as the William Optics, honestly, it will come out to be the same price. And also because they are the same scopes, you can use any of the William Optics accessories on both the Astrotech and the Apertura. So if budget is of a concern and you really want to stay below $500, I go with the Astrotech. Um, I personally think Astrotech makes a lot of really, really nice and affordable telescopes. Um, yeah. What would you recommend for tracking? Well, is that Shiki Bobo? Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Yeah. Like George is saying. Oh, George, I think they're even less than 400 now. Um, yeah, get a Star Ventra Pro or or even a Sky Guider Pro. To be honest, they're both really the same. They do the same thing. They come from two different brands. It's really a matter of preference. I I was exposed to the Star Ventura Pro early on, and I've been using it ever since. As a matter of fact, I did a video on my Star Ventura Pro. After this chat, you're more than welcome to go check out my review of the Star Ventura Pro. I really recommend it. It's going to teach you so much about astrophotography. It does all the things that the bigger and fancier mount will do as a core function. That is, track the night sky. It's gonna track the night sky for you just like the fancier mount. The only thing that it doesn't have is it doesn't have any computerized control. It doesn't have any go-to capabilities. You're gonna have to find your own object, and that was the discussion earlier about the green laser pointer. But I don't look at that as a minus, especially for beginners, because you know I think there's a lot of good to learn the night sky and just have a general concept of where some of the major objects are, so you can sort of form a map in the night sky. And I think that when you start off with a bigger and fancier mount, it will be very natural for anybody to rely on, the go-to capabilities. Just punch it into the computer and it'll slew to the target automatically. Um, but I think as a beginner, it's good to do that yourself so you can learn the night sky. And the biggest benefit is that, when you eventually upgrade to a bigger and fancier mount, eventually that mount is going to give you some issues on any random night. So if you have an understanding of the night sky, if you know where things are, generally speaking, then if you have issues with your mount, you can diagnose it. You can quickly say that, hey, that's not really California Nebula, or it's not pointing that way. It's so start small, go with a lightweight star tracker like. Well, go-tos are go-tos are pain to set up. They're not easy to set up. But once you have them set up, they're actually really accurate. I haven't had an issue where, you know, it pointed to the wrong object. If it did, it was because of me and me not polar aligning correctly. Um, but if if you've got a go-to mount and is not pointing where you tell it to go, I think that's a separate issue altogether. And I hope that's not the case. Let's see. Yeah, Cody Brown, as I mentioned, the Astrotech version is as bare bone as possible, which is why it is the least expensive of the three. But if you price out the accessories, it's going to cost probably just as much as the William Optics. So if the William Optics version is how you want your 60 millimeter apochromatic refractor to end up, you might as well buy the William Optics version. Um, but yeah, those 60 millimeter apochromatic refractor is, um, I think George can chime in on this. It's probably some of the best 60 millimeter apochromatic refractor out there. They're so well made. The optics are so good. I honestly don't care if they're only a doublet because, man, like they're affordable and they provide really good images. So, um, what focal length did I decide initially? Um, oh, and also, by the way, sorry if I mispronounced your name again, but Shiki Boo Boo, if your mount is giving you mechanical issues, you may consider looking into a different mount. I think it's cool that you're trying to problem solve, but if you problem solve to the point where you identify, okay, this mount has issues, then I think you've done your part as far as problem solving is concerned, and you've earned the right to upgrade. um, for my DJ Reagan, for my very first scope, do we count cameras, camera lenses, or like actual dedicated telescopes for astrophotography? Because I initially started on a camera lens. Oh, Shikibubu, that's I'm sorry. So it sounds like your mead mount is not even an equatorial mount. Okay, in that case, definitely get an equatorial mount. Uh, okay, so um, let me just type it here so you can shaky bulb. Okay, okay. So let me just type in the two mounts and you can research them. So mounts that I recommend: Star Trekkers, Star Ventra Pro, and entry level. EQ6R Pro. Yeah. DJ Reagan. I actually started with a camera lens. My very first astrophotography image was done with a Rokinon 135 millimeters f2.0, which apparently is extremely popular. And I can see why, because for whatever reason, that Rokinon 135 is like the sharpest 135 out there, and and they're not even that expensive. Although on the used market, I've seen their value have been going up more and more because I think that more and more people are finding out that this Rokinon 135 is as good as it is. Um, but I had an issue with it. I had an issue with the Rokinon 135, mainly because I had a hard time balancing it. Um, yeah, so the Rokinon for me, I have to buy a collar, which I don't yet. I have to buy a collar so that I can actually mount my optical train sort of in the middle, so I can balance out the the declination axis. Because right now, I don't have a collar for that lens. So when I use it on my Star Ventra Pro, I basically mount my camera directly from the bottom. So that means that I'm always front heavy. And I also don't have a way to mount that camera lens onto my HDQ5 Pro because I don't have a dove plate for that. Um, so it actually didn't take me long until I knew that I had to get a an actual telescope, and so I went with the William Optics Space Cat 51 because I read so many reviews that, oh man, this is one of the sharpest telescopes you can buy, and I actually didn't really care about the optics. I didn't really care about the Petzval design. Because back then when I bought it, I didn't know what any of those things mean. What I cared about was the focal length. I wanted something that was still really low in focal length. Yes, I used the Canon with my Rokinon, and I still do. Um, yeah, I wanted something really short in focal length because I I've had some experience as a visual observer using a Newtonian reflector with about 700 millimeters of focal length, and I actually hated the visual experience because of that. Because I wasn't using a GoTo mount. I was using a manual alt-ass mount that came with a telescope, and I had a hard time finding anything because I was so zoomed in that one small movement and I'm like halfway across the sky, or that's what it felt like at least. So I knew immediately that my first actual telescope was going to be shorter in focal length, because I wanted to start small. And I have an appreciation for wide field astrophotography. I think it's really awesome that especially on a project where you can fit in multiple objects. I think that's super cool because, in your head you're thinking, oh well, okay, this one object is, hundreds of millions. I mean, I'm sorry, no, it's like hundreds of light years across, and then this other object is another hundreds of light years across. So, just in that picture, because I have those two objects, I know this one particular picture is covering at least, like 200 light years of distance. So I think that's super cool, and I may be the oddball here, but I actually prefer stars in my images. I don't I don't really like starless pictures because I think it looks a little bit too unnatural for me, and I think having all those stars. Of course, I don't want it. I don't want my picture to be like a fuzzy white screen, you know. But I think having some stars, it gives you a different perspective. It gives you the perspective of, you know, yeah, you're focusing in on, these one or two nebula, but in the background, there are still all these countless of stars. So, so that's why I really enjoy wide field astrophotography. And also, it was just so much easier to learn with, especially when I started off. I was finding my own object, having a wider field of view, having a shorter focal length. It just made everything so much easier to find objects and frame them. And it's also easier on the tracker too because you're not so zoomed in, so it takes more to start seeing star trails. You know, you definitely do. You definitely do. You when you have longer focal length, there's actually a little bit of there's more issues when it comes to longer focal length because usually for any telescope, the longer you go in focal length, the bigger your telescope is going to be and the heavier your telescope is going to be. So the demand on your mount is going to increase as you increase in focal length. So, if you're not guiding well or if you're not tracking well, all those issues will amplify with the longer focal length. Um, and also, I think that longer focal length is just it's not beginner friendly because it's it's too easy to get lost. And and I always say this: telescopes, when you are using them, when you're holding them in your hands, they are always bigger and chunkier than they look on display. So having longer focal length is good, and I think for most of us, eventually we need to get into those longer focal length telescope. But starting out, I think they're just nothing but problems for the beginners. Anybody here buy any new gear recently? But yeah, my journey. Yeah, geez, 1,000 millimeters, man. That's that's a lot of reach. That's a lot of reach. The most I have right now is 800 millimeters of focal length, and um, I wasn't comfortable with it until I've had a ton of practice on my smaller telescopes. Um, my going back to DJ Reagan's original question about my journey, it actually started. Some of you guys may already know this, but it actually started with wow, Pat's photo. That's that's a lot of stuff you just got. Let's see. Pat's photos got a EQ6R Pro, very nice. ASI Air Pro, very nice. EQ mod cable, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a complete setup. I believe that Orion Astrograph is it's a Newtonian reflector. That's really cool. Hey, Ollie's Astro, welcome. Yeah, I'm on the HQ5 Pro as well, and so right now, I'm using the Astrotech AT115 EDT as my big boy telescope. Um, and it's not I'm not maxing out the mount yet, but I'm not sure if I want to use a larger telescope than the 115 or a heavier telescope than the 115 on the HQ5 Pro. I'm pretty sure I can, and I should be okay with it. I think depending on the weight of the telescope, I think the HGQ5 Pro can probably handle up to a 130 millimeter refractor, but I think that may be pushing it already. Um, wow, Newtonian at f4. That is nice. Um, yeah. How I started, I'll go back to how I started astrophotography. I started because um, I've always been interested in astronomy. I have a science background, not in astronomy, but in like biology. But I've always I love all things science and engineering. So last year when Comet Neowise came around, I started to hunt for it, and I love the chase more than the than the actual imaging when it came to Neowise. Because at that point I knew nothing about astrophotography. I knew nothing about photography in general. So I just took a camera and I pointed in the direction where I thought Neowise would be, and all I got was a fuzzy little blue dot. And then I see other people's pictures, such as George's pictures, and I got mad. I was like, "There's no way that my pictures look so crappy and other people's Neowise picture looks so amazing." So that's when I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to do this. I'm going to learn everything there is to know so I could do astrophotography properly. And that's really how I started. I after common EOIs, I started to research into equatorial mounts. I researched into tracking. Um, then I want to see, okay, can I use my existing gear to start the hobby? Um, because I really wanted to see if I could do this and if this was a hobby that I want to invest both money and time. And yeah, the rest was history. I started on a Star Ventra Pro. My first target was the Lagoon Nebula, which I am really looking forward to image again come August. That'll be my 1 year mark. August will be my 1 year mark. And then, started with the Rokinon 135. Then I somehow, I don't know how, but last year I found a William Optic Space Cat 51, and that really jump started my astrophotography. And at that point, I still didn't know anything about doublet, triplet, optics, FPL 53, none of that stuff. I don't think I even knew what F ratio was. Um, People kept talking about how fast the space cat or the red cat was. And I was like, I don't understand it. So, but I bought that telescope because of all the positive reviews, and all the people were raving about how good and easy to use it was. And it was actually that telescope that I started to learn about, F ratios, doublet, triplets, different kinds of glass. Um, and then after that, the next big milestone would have been me. It would have been me astro modifying my camera, because I researched into, how to get more hydrogen alpha response, because I realized that I prefer imaging nebulae a lot more than anything else. So I learned how to astro modify my camera, so I bought a used Canon 60D with unknown shutter count for very cheap, not a lot of money. I think I pay maybe $150 for the camera, just so that it'll be my spare camera if I take it apart and if I break it, or if I can't put it back together. I'm not really going to cry over it, because I would still have my original Canon, my old Canon T2i that I can still use. Why didn't I astro modify the T2i instead? Well, because it didn't have a flexible screen, so I didn't want that to be my my go-to astrophotography camera, because it would just hurt my neck. And I picked the Canon 60D. It was either between 60D or the Canon T3i, whichever one I could find, because they were the oldest Canon camera, and so therefore the cheapest with the flip screen. So yeah, I took that apart, and I was able to astro modify it, and that really changed my imaging. I was seeing stuff that I could never pick up before. Um, it was a moment, and then the next I guess the next big milestone I had was, how would I describe like a straight line up? How would I describe the learning curve? I think that Ollies Astro. I think that depends on. I think that depends on the kind of person you are. Um, are you the kind of person that is okay with more failure than success? And are you the kind of person that likes people to hold your hands the whole time, or are you the kind of person that likes to learn and have hands-on experience and actually let your hands communicate with your brain? Because I feel like those are the best learning session. So for me, how would I describe the learning curve? It was hmm, it's very I say it's very steep. Um, and I think you have to remind yourself that we've never, as a civilization, we've never had this kind of technology where ordinary humans can just look up in the night sky and take these amazing photos. So I have to keep telling myself that, hey, you know what? I'm taking pictures that are tens of thousands of light years away. So, you know, if I get nothing out of tonight, that's okay because it's very difficult. So, and I was really okay with failure. Um, the nights where the nights where everything went smoothly, I can tell you that I don't really remember those nights. Um, but the nights where everything goes wrong, I get nothing out of it, or some random piece of equipment failed, and I don't know why. Those are for me the most memorable nights. So, and also I'm really competitive. And for those of you who don't know, I play a lot of tennis, and I compete a lot in tennis. And also the sport of tennis, part of that is you're competing with yourself. So I was okay with failing as long as I'm telling myself that, hey, I'm trying to get better for the next time. And I'm trying to sort of prove myself, that I can do this. Even though I'm using, subpar equipment compared to other people who've been doing this far, far longer and produce much superior pictures. Um, I think this hobby challenges. I think this hobby hits home with certain personalities, but then at the same time, I think that I can see why this hobby is a major turnoff to some people. Because if you're looking for instant gratification, this is not the hobby for you. Um, is it hard to pace ourselves? Pace ourselves as in progress or buying gear? DJ Reagan. Um, and I think Shiki, I think yeah, I think you're right. Every night you're gonna have some failure, but try not to expect it. Um, I think on any given night, if you have if you have 8 failures and you have 2 success, I say that's a good night. Um, for sure, you have to be ready to fail and just keep going back until you crack it. Yeah, Ollie. Like I said, it really depends on the person. I know some people who are not okay with failing, and I know those individuals from daily life and sports. People I compete against. There are some people that are just not okay with failure. So for those people, this hobby is going to be really difficult. But for me, when I'm playing tennis, when I'm practicing, um, everything I do in an actual match in tennis, I almost completely disregard it because if I hit that one awesome shot in a match, unless I know I can hit that shot 1,000 times in practice, until I can do that, it means that I don't own that shot. And if I pull that off during a match, I got lucky. So, and that's sort of how I approach astrophotography. If on a particular night where you know nothing went wrong, I think I just got lucky. The nights where nothing went wrong, but I know why nothing went wrong, and I can explain my course of action. Those are the good nights, you know. And likewise for failure, if you have an error, if you have a failure in your astrophotography, and you can pinpoint exactly what you did wrong or which piece of equipment failed and why, those are the best nights. I don't care about the final image. Excuse me. I always tell people, the final image doesn't really mean a whole lot. It's really about the progress, how you got to that final image. Um, let's see. Going back to the chat, lens cap. Oh yeah, Shiki. That I can't tell you how many times I left my lens cap on, and then I walk back inside, and I come out like 3 hours later. 3 hours later, that's when I realized I left the lens cap on. Um, so then, yeah, that I do that so many times. You have no idea. DJ Reagan, probably both. Yeah. I think early on I made quick progress that sort of told me I can like start buying the next phases of gear. Um, like with the Star Ventra Pro, I quickly ran into the problem of star trails. And I got lucky on the used market that I found a used HEQ5 Pro. And I guess that would be the next milestone because um, now went from being able to have star trail free pictures up to 2.5 minutes without guiding. Let's see. Yeah, Shiki. Sometimes if you have a bad piece of equipment, then you have a bad piece of equipment. Um, yeah, and I guess for me the next breakthrough would have been learning about those dual narrowband filters. Um, learning about what they do, learning about how they, pull in that hydrogen alpha data or the oxygen 3 data. I think um, that was the next big breakthrough for me, because using those filters, it made me it forced me to learn um, how to connect my mount to my computer so I can start guiding. Because those filters require significantly more exposure time. So that's when I started to use full moons, or the nights with full moons, to learn stuff, to test stuff, because I knew for a fact that when I was trying to connect my computer to the mount, that I was gonna have several nights where I get nothing out of it. I would just problem solve issues, or learn how to install the software and whatnot. So I decided that I think it was around Halloween of last year that I'm just gonna spend that week of full moon to learn how to install ASCOM and EQ mod and connect my mount to my computer. Um, and then I think I took another week or so to learn how to guide. So yeah. And I guess that's why I started to do these chats around full moon, because, well, I'm likely not going to be imaging under the full moon, because I'm not doing narrowband imaging. So I think if you use the right filters, you can still do hydrogen alpha imaging, but it's still going to be rough. So I just decided, okay, full moons are the nights where I just have to accept the fact that I'm not going to be doing astrophotography. Especially now with galaxy season. Oh my god, that moon would just wash out all of my galaxies. And and I have to say that I'm really looking forward to the end of the galaxy season. Um, for a lot of reasons. I think that number one, I don't have enough telescope to really image galaxies. And if you know me, I don't like the idea of cropping. Um, I I don't like cropping because I like to preserve the original picture as I took it. Um, you generally play soft now. I only Ollie, I only play soft when I'm trying to pick up from a previous session. Um, like when I'm trying to add more hours, or when I'm trying to add more data. That is the only time that I use play solving. Because I don't know, I like, yeah, I'm using a GoTo now, but I like framing my own object. I don't know why. So if I'm starting a brand new project, um, no, I don't play soft. I just punch in my target, let my telescope slew to it, and then I make my fine, my small adjustments and frame it however I want. The only time that I use play solving is when I am trying to add data. DJ Reagan, I never really got interested in the moon. Although my boss, he keeps asking me for a moon picture, so eventually I'm gonna have to start imaging the moon. And also, I have to agree that play solving is a game changer because it really lets you like stretch out your project. It really lets you to, you know, pile on the data and get that final result that you really want. Yeah, and in case you were wondering, I don't ask him for. Nah, I can't do that. I'm really lucky that I work with a really great team at my job. Um, they're extremely understanding, easy to work with. Um, yeah, no. Um, let's see. Oh, DJ Reagan, in case you were wondering, I'm not. I won't be interested in planets either. And I think it's because I see enough of them. You know, either through media, um, news, or they. I feel like planets have enough exposure that I myself don't need to image them. But other deep sky objects, like all these nebulae in the night sky, like I'm really imaging them because, hey, I want to see how they look like. Um, and I think that nebulae they don't have enough media exposure to the point where, you know, I'm sick of seeing them, or like when I see them, I'm not like, ooh, wow. Um, how uh, how are you guys doing during the galaxy season? Are you guys getting any decent pictures? Any decent pictures of galaxies? I'll be back. I'm gonna get some. I'm gonna get some water. EQ6R. No, I don't see myself going to the EQ6R because, well, for one, the only reason why I would upgrade a mount right now is if I am seeking out a bigger telescope. Um, and I'm not at the moment. But the next mount that I get, I'm likely going to skip the class that the EQ6R reside in and actually just go with a bigger overall mount. Um, because because I think with the EQ6R Pro, I think I get another. I think I get another 10 pounds of payload capacity over my HEQ5, and with a 10 pounds difference, I'm not sure if that's worth the upgrade for me. So my next upgrade when it comes to mount is probably going to be in the range of the EQ8, something like that. Yeah, Ollie's 450 millimeters. That's unfortunately. I mean, you can still do it. You just have to crop way in. Um, but obviously, as you know, it's not ideal. And I'll tell you that even right now, with my Astrotech AT115 with 805 millimeters of focal length, that's still not enough to do any galaxies, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I'm thinking. I think the EQ6R is a little bit too close to the HEQ5. As a matter of fact, if the EQ6R was available to me when I was looking for a mount, yeah, I would have gotten the EQ6R. But, you know, on the used market, you kind of just get whatever that's available at the moment. And the HEQ5 was available to me, so I got it. And then the EQ6R, I like I said, I think there's only 10 more pounds of payload capacity, and I think that's just a little bit too close. Um, let's see. Ioptron Smart EQ, and they were just yeah. So Shiki, those star trackers, you are correct that they are generally built for camera lenses. Um, really low payload capacity. As a matter of fact, my Space Cat 51 or the 60 millimeter apochromatic refractor that we were talking about earlier, those just about max out those star trackers. So I'm not too familiar with the Ioptron Smart EQ. Let me just quickly look it up. Give me 1 second. I can look it up. Ioptron Smart. Okay, so I took a quick look at the Ioptron, and it looks like you're gonna have a similar issue because the payload capacity for it is it's at 11 pounds, so it's not any higher than the Star Trackers that we mentioned. It's just that I believe the Ioptron Smart UQ, yeah, it has GoTo capabilities. I don't know how accurate or how robust it is, but that's the real difference between the two. Oh, DJ Reagan, let me tell you, man, on the used market, I have, I have, I can spend a whole segment on the used market, but I was ready to buy. Like when I saw it, I was like, okay, I see that you have an HGQ5 Pro. Okay, I'm okay with the money that you want. Here's the money. Send it over. Like no negotiation when it comes to like used items on the used market. But I want to go back to the used market, but I want to address Ollie's question first. Do you think if and when you went something like an EQ8, you would build an observatory? Um, would I build an observatory? That depends on my living situation. I'm actually at the moment I'm looking into a new place. Um, I live in San Francisco. And so if I stay in San Francisco, then I'm not going to be able to build an observatory. We just don't have that kind of space for that. If I move a little bit further, possibly. But I don't know. I don't know about the need for an observatory because I'm okay just tarping my mount right now. Like my HQ5. I haven't moved it since Thanksgiving, probably since late November. And when I'm not using it, I just put a tarp over it, and it's fine. And it's able to withstand rain, wind, sun. Yeah, I don't really know if I have a need for observatory, to be honest. Um, yeah, okay. Going back to the used market, um, I think there's yeah, George has an EQ6R. Yeah, he knows how heavy they are. Going back to the used market, I think there's a lot of dishonorable transaction going on, and I know that many sellers are taking advantage of the supply and demand issue that we have in the hobby, and they are essentially charging like new prices on used item, which I think it's a it's, it's not good, guys. Don't do that. I mean, like I saw so many listings like last week for like random dedicated Astro camera. Like I saw a ZWO ASI 533 going on sale. I mean, going on the used market for like 860 US dollars when brand new it's 899 US dollars. And are you kidding me? You're gonna sell something used for $30 off of retail? When if I buy from retail, or if I just wait for the retail to restock, I have I have all the benefits of an authorized receipt from an authorized dealer. So if anything goes wrong, I can just return it, no questions asked. But if I buy it on the used market, I don't get that kind of benefit. But here I am paying like new prices for a thoroughly used item. Um, yeah, and I think that's DJ Reagan. I think that's so shady because yeah, a lot of us are desperate. Like oh man, we need that scope. Like some of us may want that big giant telescope for the galaxy season. And I think that there are sellers out there. They know that it's really hard to get a telescope right now, so they'll charge you essentially brand new pricing for a used item. Um, and I'm just not okay with it. I think it's really bad practice, and I think a lot of people are taking advantage of the the increase in popularity in astrophotography, and that there's a lot of beginners that don't know a whole lot and they don't know what to look for when they buy gear. So, when they see ads like, oh, apochromatic triplet refractor, um, and they go on, they list it for like $1,000 used, and I think a lot of beginners would be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's how much they should be. But I don't know. I think that I think I think the community has a problem when it comes to gear, to be honest. Yeah, I agree with George there. I also think that a lot of people are buying crap that they won't be needing. Like, no beginner, I'm sorry, no true beginner should be getting guy scopes and guy camera. As a matter of fact, personally, I think that unless you know your way around the night sky or at least have a good general idea, you shouldn't be buying a go-to mount to begin with because you will have no idea how to set it up. You will have no idea where it's slewing to, and I'm sorry, beginners and go-to mounts they don't mix. They don't mix at all. I hear so many horror stories of people trying to set up their go-to mount and they're just lost, and I feel bad for them because I don't want that to be people's first impression of the hobby. Yes, this hobby is frustrating, but it is also very rewarding. But if your first impression of the hobby is frustrated with gear, I think you're sort of missing the point of the hobby. The point of the hobby is not to, mess with the gear. The point of the hobby is have fun and enjoy the night sky. So that's why I always encourage people to start slow, build your way up, don't spend too much money in the beginning, and then let your final image tell you or carve out a way for you to upgrade. If your final image is lacking data, then okay, yeah, you probably need to learn how to plate stuff so you can add data. If your final image is telling you that you could use some more hydrogen alpha data, okay, then look into astro modifying your camera or getting a filter. I don't think you should just buy gear because people tell you to buy gear or you saw this cool and awesome review out there that says, "Oh, this is the next great thing." Um, yeah, I don't know. I really like helping out people, but at the same time, I see a lot of problem with the astrophotography community. Yeah, I'm the same way, DJ Reagan. Like I said in the beginning, I think the fact that us normal humans, untrained in this field, and we're able to take these awesome pictures, I think that's already a plus. Yeah, yeah, all of us are like that. Most of the time I still don't know what I'm doing or what's happening out there. Um, I think a lot of times when I get to that final image, um, that's just a bonus to me. I think the go-to scopes, I mean, sorry, go-to mounts can teach you a lot, but you have to know the basics first. As in, you have to be able to polar align properly. You have to balance properly. You have to have some idea of the night sky. Um, and once you have all of that, I think GoTo mounts are great. They will teach you a lot. Okay. All right, my throat's getting dry. I've been talking too long. Do you guys have any more questions, or we can uh we can end the chat and look forward to the next full moon. And hopefully by then there'll be some nebula in the night sky for me to image because and hopefully the damn clouds will go away too. I can't believe I haven't been out there since since February. All right. No, Ollie, thank you for your questions. And thank you, DJ Reagan, for your questions. I hope I was able to answer your question regarding my journey. Um, I guess in parts, um, because I feel like I can go in so many different directions when it comes to journey of anything. Did I get Pix Insight yet? Yes, I got the trial version of Pix Insight. Um, and I can tell you that I'm not I'm not the biggest fan of Pix Insight. And this will be my last thought before I end the stream. Pix Insight is no doubt superior than, you know, Photoshop when it comes to editing astrophotography. But for me, it's too digital. It's too precise. It's not analog enough. Um, like I think you have I think there's more flexibility in Photoshop, but I think PixInsight it's a better, objectively better program when it comes to astrophotography. So I'm kind of torn. Like, you know, I can process it better in PixInsight, but it's sort of like, you know, it's sort of like using a robot and just pressing buttons and say, oh, okay, this will stretch my image optimally. Oh, okay, this button will reduce the noise. Um, Whereas in Photoshop, you kind of have to play with it until you get to the point where, okay, this is how I want my image to look. Now, of course, you can take whatever you do in PixInsight, take it out, and then you know do your final edits in Photoshop. But I don't know. I think PixInsight is really powerful, but I don't know. I just don't have a whole lot of fun using it. Uh, if you guys know me, you guys would know that I like I like the kind of like the manual process of a lot of things. I like to do things manually and yeah. Do I recommend PixInsight? Yes, of course. It's objectively better. Will you have more fun doing editing in PixInsight? Uh, I don't know. That's going to be up to the person. Yeah. Oh, you know what, DJ Reagan? That is actually precisely what I'm going to be doing in August. That's why I said in the beginning of this live chat that I'm really looking forward to see Lagoon Nebula again in August, so I can do a uh, before before and after, like you know my very first picture, and then you know how far have I come now, and I'll hope that I can actually still use the same level of equipment between and see a comparison between my very first Lagoon and my Lagoon in 2021. I think I'm really looking forward to that. As a matter of fact, that is really the only reason why I haven't sold some of the some of the old camera gears. That's the only reason why I haven't sold my T2i um, and my Rokinon 135 because I don't use my Rokinon 135 much anymore. But at the same time, I know that there's no way I can find and buy another Rokinon 135 for the price that I got it for. So, yeah. Yeah. Man, I'm looking for anything after the Galaxy season. Yep. I'm gonna try to use the same equipment. Um, yeah, I hope the next time I talk to you guys, the next full moon, we're gonna be coming on to the tail end of the Galaxy season because I don't know what it is. Maybe because of my location, but springtime, it's nothing but clouds. All right, guys. Um, I'm gonna take off. I want to thank all of you for joining and sort of give me a fix of astrophotography because I haven't been able to go out there and image. It's really fun to just talk to other like-minded people who have a passion for this amazing hobby. So if you are able to image the galaxy, uh, man, I envy you guys and I wish you guys luck. And I know that most of us probably don't have enough focal length to do the galaxies, but hey, if you have clear skies, go out there anyways and just do it um because why not? I mean, there's nothing else you can image anyways. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna take off. I'll uh I'll chat with you guys on those Facebook groups or in my YouTube comments. Oh, and sorry I haven't uploaded a video lately because well I can't image. So, but I am working on a review coming up, so that should be uploaded pretty soon. So I hope you guys will look forward to that. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night. See you guys.